All right, so now that we have got our asset folder created, we are ready to actually open up Adobe Audition. So I'm going to head up here to my applications. And let's see here. There it is at the top. Let's go ahead and double click on that. And what we're going to do here, y'all, is I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the layout of this program and talk about how to get yourself set up when you're working on your job. So let's go ahead and let's start the multi-track session that we're going to use for these teaching videos. So I'm going to head up here to File. We're going to go New, Multi-track Session. And when this window pops up, y'all, there's just a couple of things that you need to make note of. For starters, go ahead and give your project a name. In my case, I'm just going to title it English 1030. Make note of where the project folder is going to be located. You can choose to place this in other locations if you'd like. In my case, I prefer to have it on my desktop, and that is simply because it is as easy to find as possible. For here, as you can see, it's not giving me any options as far as other templates are concerned. In your case, if you do have options available to you in this drop-down menu, just make sure that you have selected podcast. And then for the sample rate, you will want to make sure that that reads 44100, and that is the industry standard for sample rates for myriad projects, from podcasting to video making. And you should not have to concern yourself with bit depth or mix. So from sample rate on up to session name, these are the ones that you'll have to pay attention to. In my case, those all look good. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And this is going to go ahead and open up our workspace. And as you continue to become more comfortable using Adobe Audition, maybe for future projects, you don't necessarily have to stay in this workspace. You can choose a different one. If you go up here to Window and Workspace, you can see you have multiple options to choose from, and each one of them contains a different layout depending upon your workflow and what you're trying to focus on for your video project. In our case, because I want to make sure that we're all working from the same starting point, we're going to stay with the default settings. So make sure that this is more or less what your workspace looks like. And even if you just want to stay within the default workspace, eventually you can customize this to your liking. You can click and drag various parts of the workspace over, and you can rearrange to your liking. But like I said, for right now, we're going to keep it as it is. So again, y'all, I'm just showing you the parts of the program that you need to know in order to complete this project. So this panel up here to the top left-hand corner of your screen, this is where you will see any assets that you have uploaded into your project bin. And this little icon here, the folder with the directional arrow, that is the import function. That is what we will use to pull in those outside assets. This panel here is where you will actually work on assembling your podcast. This is where about 90% of your work is going to be done. And I'll go over some of the finer features of this in just a moment. And then we have the essential sound panel over here, which will come in handy when we are working with adding and ducking our music. And up here we can see we have the toolbar. There's really only 3 tools that you need to be familiar with, and those are the Move tool, the Razor Selection Clip tool, and the Time Selection tool. We will only be using those 3. And then over here, if you move a little bit over to the left, you can see that you can toggle back and forth between the multi-track editor view, which is what we are in right now. This is where you will be staying most of the time. You can also move into waveform, which is not going to work right now, and that's only because we don't actually have a sound file loaded. But waveform is what you will toggle into if you are trying to work on one specific sound file. Now, moving back to the assembly panel over here, a couple of features that you will want to make note of. One is that you do have horizontal and vertical scroll bars, and you can use these for navigating throughout your work, specifically for editing purposes. And if you click and drag, and you change the size of that scroll bar, as you can see, you are either condensing or expanding the timeline that you are working within. So again, for editing purposes, especially if you're trying to cut out very specific blemishes in your audio, this will be a very valuable tool. And you can do the same thing, like I said, vertically. So if I want, I can move about, and I can use this to try and expand my view of one of the tracks, or I can try to make it a little bit smaller. Now, as far as the individual tracks are concerned, as you can see, because this is, of course, the multi-track view in the multi-track session, you have several tracks that you're going to be working with. Because you're going to be working with multiple different types of audio between your principal narration, your music, and maybe any sound effects or ambient noise that you want to include as well. And you can, of course, change the name of each one of these tracks if you'd like, just for organizational purposes. So the top track up here, you might go ahead and say that this is your narration track, and then the bottom one here you would say is music. So label them however you see fit. Each one of the tracks has a couple of controls. M is for mute, and as the name would suggest, that is for when you want to mute this individual track. Solo is the control that you can use if you have multiple tracks that you are using all at once, but when you press play, you really only want to hear this one. So if you press solo, this will be the only track that I hear, and the rest of them will be muted. And R is set to record, and that is when we are letting Adobe Audition know that we are ready to go ahead and record our own audio. So if I click on this, you can see that it's already picking up some sound there. So we're ready to go ahead and record if I want to go ahead and do that. In my case, I am going to go ahead and click off. But that is a quick overview of the general layout of Adobe Audition as we are going to use it for this assignment.